on.
Okay, we're going to start on tests. I'm in Bais, and we're towards the bottom. We're in the middle of a Bais that's going to be a proof to Rav. We don't have to go over the whole Bais, but we had a machlokes between Rav and Levi about what to do with the money that someone had benefit improperly from Kachim. So that means it's a violation of Meilah. Now he has to pay the money. He has to pay the principal, that the benefit that he had, plus an extra fee. But what does he have to do with that money? So Rav said that the money goes to Nidava. It means you bring sacrifices with it when the altar is empty. And Levi said, no, 1 second. Those sacrifices that you bring when the altar is empty, who gets benefits from that? The Kayanim. They eat it. So 1 second. You can't commit the violation of Meilah and then go enjoy it on like the rebound, afterwards. So it needs to go to something that's totally burnt up, that no one gets enjoyment from, no one gets personal enjoyment from. That must be the Ketairos. So Levi says that the money has to go towards the Ketairos.
Isn't why then the Ola?
Eily, we get the skin.
Oh.
So enjoying the smell doesn't count.
Yeah, or maybe no one was in there. Okay, we had a proof for Levi, and the proof from Levi was possibly a statement of Levi himself. It was a machlekes Rashi and Tosfos here, who that was. We had a proof for Rav. The proof for Rav was a brisa that says, the brisa said that kol karbanos hamizbeach l'mizbeach. All sacrifices for the altar go to the altar. That means that you can bring karbanos with it. Let's start from Haguf Akasha. It's 5 lines from the bottom. Haguf Akasha. Gemara says that the Bais itself has a contradiction in it. Without going through the whole Bais, you'll see the contradiction just in the quote. It starts off saying, Ad shalei karva chatasei, that before the chatas was brought, Yosef v'yavi chatasei. This was talking about if you had benefit from the money of a chatas. So now you need to add keren v'chaimesh, but you can add it to the money. And then you buy a new chatas, you have an additional money to use to buy the chatas. That's because before you bought the chatas, you realize that you violated Meilah, so you just designate more extra money. However, mishakar v'chatas, but after the chatas was brought already, you find out that you had Meilah. Now what do? You had benefit from the money. It's too late. What do you do with this money? So yalchal yam melach. The equivalent of, if it would have been an animal, you would have to let it die. The equivalent of that in money is you throw it into the sea. Uktani, but we also taught in the Brisa, and this was the part that was the raya, the proof to Rav, kol karbanos hamizbeach l'mizbeach. All sacrifices of the altar go to the altar. That means any benefit that you get from a sacrifice goes towards the altar. The problem is, the problem is that when you make a statement like that, it sounds like it doesn't matter if the atonement was brought or not. And we just said that if the atonement was brought, you have to throw it into the sea. No, I'm not specific in that. I'm talking about, was the chatas brought? When did you find out about the Meilah?
Oh, the stint was where I got it.
If it's before the chatas was brought, then you can then you can add more money to the chatas. And that's good. It's supposed to go to the altar, and now it goes to the altar. But you said that if it's after, you find out after you bought the chatas already, and you have that money, or you brought the chatas already, and you have that money that you need to repay, so you have to throw it into the sea. Now, so why are you saying it goes to the altar? It doesn't go to the altar, it goes to the sea. So it's a contradiction. The Gemara answers, Reisha Reb Shimon hi. The Reisha that is so specific, that's Reb Shimon Damar Kol Chatas Shekipur Bailam Tamas. Reb Shimon holds that whenever the owner had a kapara, so the rest of anything that's left over from the chatas, you had an extra head. Is it an extra chatas or it has to be put to death. So here, what do you do with the money? You have to throw it into the sea. And now we're on top of Yud. The Sefer Rabbanan. We said Reisha Reb Shimon v'Sefer Rabbanan. And the Rabbanan say the Sefer that the Rabbanan don't make a distinction between if it was brought already. And the reason for this is because the Rabbanan hold that a chatas that gets lost and then is found. So it depends when it's found. If it's found after the kapara, after everything was already done, so then it's tamas. It's left to die. But if it's found before the kapara, so then you're allowed to let it get a mum. So where do we say? And then what do you do with that money after it gets a mum? You sell it, and then what do you do with that money? It goes to an adava. So when we said over here that kol karbanos hamizbeach l'mizbeach could go according to the Rabbanan that say that as long as it wasn't lost at the time of the kapara, if you had it, if you knew about it before the kapara, then it could go, even though the kapara was brought already. The chatas, it can still go for an adava as well, so it is l'mizbeach. Amar Rav Kviyam the Big Sil, Rav Kviyam the Big Sil says, Rav Ashi, Hachi Amar Rabbi, Reisha Reb Shimon, v'Sefer Rabbanan. Says, by the way, Rabbi said that as well. That Reisha Reb Shimon, v'Sefer Rabbanan. When you read that brisa, so that there's a contradiction in it. The way you resolve the contradiction is you say that it's Machlekes Reb Shimon and the Rabbanan that's in there, even though it doesn't say it. The Machlekes would be if a chatas gets lost and it's found la'achar kapara, is that the only case where it's at mesa, or is it whenever it gets lost and you designated another one and you find it, it's always mesa? It's Machlekes Reb Shimon and the Rabbanan. Amar Rava, it's supposed to be Ula. I wouldn't know that it's supposed to be Ula, but the Shita Mekubetzes corrects it. I mean, I have no proof just from the context, and it needs to be Ula, just from the manuscript. The scholars claim that when Rashi changes the girsa, it's not because of the manuscript, it's because of logical reasons. And the Bach is changing usually because of manuscripts, and that's the assumption. Different texts that they have. Okay. It's Amarava Ramula. Hakol Maidim, everyone would agree. Shemnanimi beside Kachi Kachim Shenitma. If someone has enjoyment from a sacrifice, it's Kachi Kachim. Well, that's a problem of Meilah. So why is this significant? Because it's Kachi Kachim that became Tummy. The problem here is you can't do anything with this anyway because it's Tummy already. So let's see, was the limbs that were meant to be brought up, or maybe it was the live animal, because Kachi Kachim is even before the Shechita.
It would have to be before Shechita, because how could somebody have Shechita, the Kabbalah?
Well, it could be what's from the limbs of the animal that are meant to be brought on the altar. Well, I don't know what he would have, what benefit, maybe from the fats or something that are supposed to be burnt.
Doesn't even touch them, right?
If he did. Oh, no, it must have gotten tummy. It got tummy somehow inside. I don't know how it got tummy, but somehow it got tummy. And then, you see, it can't be before the shechita, because how does it come tummy before the... Oh, shenitma, what does shenitma mean? He's tummy? No, it means the food is tummy. We're saying here, so it must be after the shechita. Or else, right? Animals don't become tummy.
Do you have this parentheses quoting Zrika?
Yeah. That's not going to affect us. I get the point of that parentheses is telling me that Kachi Kachim doesn't need to be after the Zrika, could be before the Zrika, as opposed to Kachi Kalan. But they also understand why it's in parentheses, because it doesn't matter. Because after the Zrika, there still is Meilah normally on the emurim, on the limbs that are meant to go up on the altar. So it's written, but it's in parentheses. It's not. It doesn't have to be the case. It doesn't have to be kedem zrika. It could be alaf zrika as well. So we're talking about tamei food, tamei sacrifice. Umei muri kachim kalam la'achar shehelan, or a muri kachim kalam after it's brought up. So what's the halacha? Rava or Rula saying everyone agrees the potter that you're exempt. Now, after it's brought up onto the mizbeach, kachi kalim, so it's considered like the mitzvah was done already. We said if the mitzvah's done, we added some points over there. We said that 1 second, the mitzvah isn't really done until you take the ashes and take them off and do Trumas Hadeshin. Rashi later on is going to explain that was only by Kachi Kachim you need to remove the ashes. By Kachim Kalim you don't need to remove the ashes. It's like a leniency by Kachim Kalim that once it goes on the altar, it doesn't need, you don't need Trumas Hadeshin to have the mitzvah completed, which is a chiddush. We didn't know that before. But that's what we see from this Gemara.
And to go back to your earlier point, he deduced this logically?
Oh, if it's Rava or Rula?
The distinction in this case between Kachi Kalim.
It seems like it's his own logic. Yeah. It's compelled because of the question. Like, 1 second, why are you saying Shehelan? That's enough. You need to do. I said Rashi. I mean the Mefarish. Okay. So Kumar asks Pshita. Micah Mafsid. Obviously, there's no Meilah here. There's no loss. I mean, everything had to be burnt anyway. He didn't cause. Meilah means that you're having personal use from something that belongs to the temple. The problem is that the temple has no use for this anyway, because it's tamei. So the Gemara answers, "Mahu detema." What could you have said? Basar kachi kachim shenitma islay mitzvah sreifa lakayanim. There is a mitzvah that needs to be performed, and you had personal benefit. What's the mitzvah that needs to be performed? It needs to be burnt. And the next case was a muri kachim kala mikah mitzvah lafucha b'tzinura. You have a mitzvah to flip the burgers. It's not burgers because you're not putting it there to eat to get done. You're putting it there to smoke and burn. So, but you're supposed to flip it over with the tzinura is the fork. So, Kamash Mlandalai is coming to tell us that mitzvah doesn't make it that you're still Meilah here, because really the mitzvah's been done already, it's put on the fire, and if it's Kachi Kachim, there is no use for the temple anyway for this. There's no Meilah. Amar Rava. Rava says, maybe the hechrech is because Rava would be commenting on Ula. I don't know. Hoda Amrit, it's a Hoda Amrit Kvar Karvachatas Yelchel Yam Melach. Rabbi says this is what we said, that if the Chatas was brought already, back in the Braisa, so then the money goes to the Yam Melach. Hani Mili Des Yadale Kami Kapara. That's only if he knew about his Meilah before it was brought. Avalachar Kapara, but if he only finds out about the Meilah after the Chatas was brought, then Yipul L'Nadava. He only finds out that he in other words, he used money.
But he found out about it only after.
He finds out afterwards, after the Chatas was brought, that money wasn't mine. That money was from the Chatas envelope. So when he designates money now, he doesn't send it to the Yam Melach. Why? My time, when you don't designate money just to throw out. If the money was designated before,
that's a good statement.
If it was designated before, and then you had a kapara already, so what do you do with the money? You have to throw it out. But just to designate, to throw it out, that you don't do. Okay, well, we have a Mishnah here. It's an easy Mishnah. There's just one fine point in this Mishnah, which tells us this Mishnah is going to teach us a halacha about pigel, which we heard before, but maybe a year ago. So we'll review that. It goes like this. Hakaimetz. That's the scoop and flour and oil in the Chaim's fingers that gets burnt entirely on the altar. Balavaina, the frankincense, which is also scooped off and taken onto the altar. Baktairas, the incense which is totally burnt. Minchas kainim. Whenever a mincha is brought, so normally a kaimetz is removed and the rest is eaten. But if an individual that brings a mincha is a kayin, then the rest doesn't get eaten. The whole thing is taken and burnt. Now, you still do kmitza on it, but the rest you do it like in two stages. So there's kmitza and then you burn the rest. But there's no like remnants that gets eaten. Minchas kain Mashiach, there's a mincha that the kain gadol brings every day. It's called minchas chavita. Half is burnt in the morning, half in the afternoon. Nothing is eaten from it. Minchas nesachim, the mincha that comes along with a karban. When we say on the holidays, or an individual that brings a karban, we say minchasam v'neskayim, that there's flour and wine and oil that goes along. None of that gets eaten. That's just put on the altar. So mayalim behem mishahuk deshu. There's meila in these things. Once they're consecrated, they belong to the temple. They're kadshe Hashem. If someone uses them for personal use, there is meila. Kitchen bekeli. Once they're put into a vessel, huchsher lipasel betfil yaim umechusar kippurim ubalina. Once they're in the vessel, then they become pasel. That pasel is a word that means tameh, but only one step of tameh. Can't make anything else tameh. If a tvul yaim, someone that went to the mikvah already but needs to wait for nightfall, touches it, or a mechusar kippurim comes in contact with it, or a balina, or if it stays overnight, v'chayavan alav mishum noisar mishum tameh. And you're chayav now, because it's in the vessel, if it's left over overnight, and only has one day to eat. And if it becomes tameh, and someone eats it, or if someone tameh eats it, upigel ainba, but there's no pigel. And that's what's happening here in this Mishnah, that there is no pigel in the kaimetz.
Yeah, I know I keep stumbling upon the same issue. It's now completely out of the hands of the person who paid for it.
Right.
And brought it. So somebody who's getting paid to do a job in the Bais of Mikdash is tameh. That's how this got to be tameh, right?
Could be. Or someone walking by, or a sheretz creeped out of a crack.
You didn't think of this before,
I didn't think of the sheretz. No, it never occurred to me.
And died.
Okay.
And died. And then said, what are you doing here?
I like the way it turns over.
Yeah. Could be a person. It could be a man has an emission. Maybe I don't know. Gets tameh. I don't know. So the chiddush is over here that there's no pigel. Now zeh haklal. This is a rule. Kol sheyesh lematirin. Now this is a phrase that means something else. And really, that we should use a different phrase for this, because this really throws you off. Davar sheyesh lematirin is something that will become permissible later. Let's say the classical case is an egg that's laid on Yom Tov. So after Yom Tov, it's permissible. So if it gets mixed into 1,000 other eggs, we say it's not batal. Because why do you have to rely on the rules of bittul? Tonight you'll eat it. Yom Tov will be over. So it's a davar sheyesh lematirin. Don't use bittul. That's Rashi's pshat, right? Don't use bittul when there's a way out. But that's not what we mean here, even though we're using the same words. Kol sheyesh lematirin is anything that becomes permitted by something that's done in the temple. So, for example, the remnants of a mincha becomes permitted by the kaimetz being burnt. The remnants of the animal, the meat, gets permitted by the blood being sprinkled. So the mincha, the flour, or the meat has a matirin. It has something that permits it to be used. So kol sheyesh lematirin, Ein chayavan alav mishum pigol neiser v'tamei. You're not chayav on pigol neiser v'tamei ad sheyikavu matirin until the full service is done. So in other words, if someone had thoughts of pigol that he's going to eat this sacrifice after the appropriate time, and he doesn't do the zrika, the sprinkling of blood is a matirin. So and then he goes in ahead and he eats the sacrifice. Whenever he eats it, doesn't matter. It's not pigol. Pigol is a very severe punishment. It's a kares. Has to bring, if it's b'shegi, he has to bring a chatas. But he didn't violate pigol. He ate it from an animal that the blood wasn't sprinkled, but it's not pigol. In order for it to be pigol, you need to have sprinkled the blood. Until everything else is done, it doesn't become that puzzle. Because everything needs to be done properly. V'chol she'ein le matirin, anything that doesn't have matirin, in other words, nothing else permits this. Kivan shekidish bekeli, once it's put into a vessel, chayav le mishum neiser v'tamei, then if it's left over, yes, it's nicer. If it becomes tamei, yes, it's tamei. Pigol ainba, but it never becomes pigol. So pigol is only on everything else but the main thing. On the blood that's getting sprinkled, there's no pigol. On the kaimetz that gets burnt, there's no pigol. That is the matter. Pigol is only on everything else. Why do we say this? Because it says the rules of pigol by a shlamim. And a shlamim the rest of it is permitted. And that's what the Mefarish says over here. Minahani mili. How do we know that there's nicer tamei? There's the rules of something that's left over. And the rules of tumah apply to even the mater itself. But pigol doesn't apply. And, or rather, let's say, that nicer and tamei applies whether it's the mater or whether it's davar sheyesh la material. In the Mishnah we call that Eily material. That means it's the mater. Okay. They say that in some shuls, in between Mincha Ma'ariv on Shabbos, depends in the summer or the winter, they say these different things. Barchi Nafshi, they have like these other things. Nusach Ashkenaz has these other things. I forget when they do what, but one of the Rabbanim said that after Mincha, you don't have to say Aleinu. You say Aleinu after Ma'ariv. It's because Aleinu is the matter that allows you to leave the shul. So because it all extends like one prayer, so you don't need a mater. Like Aleinu is a mater. So here, I'm just using the term mater. That this term mater means that now you can use the carbon. So
I could see this as
that's the.
So how do you leave the shul
I can
on
see this as a
Yom Kippur
dangerous
for the
tool
break? You don't
in
say
the hands of a
Aleinu,
teacher.
right?
You can't go out to break. We're not saying Aleinu today.
I think the big deal for the teacher is right when they come in, you say Hamapo. Wash your hands for bread. We'll give you after class. Okay. The Tanur Rabbana was taught in a Bais. Yachalin chayav mishum tuma ala b'davar sheish lematirin. Could be. I could have thought. The Bais says. I could have thought that I won't be obligated on a carbon becoming tamei and eating it, which is a big prohibition. Only something that has matirin. That means only the rest of the sacrifice, but not the actual mater. For example, the kaimetz. The kaimetz is the mater. I would think it's only on the davar sheyesh matirin. Vidinu, and it's even logical. Look, we're going to have a very interesting kal v'chomer.
B'dinu doesn't B'dinu mean it's not logic,
No.
it's halach.
Then,
No?
let's see. Just 1 second. Let's see.
What do you think? It's either a logic or
Din could mean law,
right. That's the
legal claim, or a logical inference.
Interesting.
Dain means this one. But din or dina could mean a logical inference. So it depends on the
how does one
context.
know?
It depends on the context. said that the word chamra means wine in Aramaic.
Right.
And it also means a donkey.
Right.
They say, how do you know? It says it depends what type of kick you get out of it. Okay. So vidinu, and it's also logical. Ma pigel should be diachas. You see, this is interesting. Pigel. Once you know that there's pigel, that's good enough. I'm not telling you anything until you hear the contrast, until Tumma. Tumma, you have to know. Oh, thank you. Beautiful. The carbonic kavua, and it has a set carbon. That means that there's only one type of carbon. It doesn't depend on your bracket, your tax bracket. And we don't say that there's ever a leniency if everyone is tamei or something. There's never a permissibility here. If we would have done the tumah first, you would see the significance of the things that we're saying. But right here, we're saying something, but we didn't contrast it yet, so it seems insignificant. So, and nevertheless, ein chayavan elal davar sheish lematirin. When it comes to pigel, which pigel seems to be more lenient. Actually, no, the opposite. Pigel seems to be more strict. But nevertheless, I have the leniency of it, that it's only on davar sheish lematirin, it's not on the matter itself. Even though it's so strict, but it still has the leniency. Tumah, when it comes to tumah, to impurity, she b'shtei yediyas. Tumah requires 2 yediyas. Yediyah means awareness. He has to know that he was tamei. Then he has to forget about it and enter the temple. And then after he entered the temple, he says, I was tamei. So that's 2 awarenesses. By pigel, he only has to know once. I ate pigel. Doesn't have to know at the time. If it's b'shegig, he brings a chatas. He didn't know. It's a chatas. So, Tumah has 2 yediyas. In other words, until you have 2 yediyas, 2 awarenesses, you're not chayv. Obviously, the second awareness is pretty obvious. It's the first awareness that's the change. The second awareness is, I only bring a carbon if I knew that I did something wrong. But that's not enough. I had to have known that I was not supposed to do this, then I forget about it, then I do it, and then I find out later that, I did it. So it's the second awareness there that's making it more lenient. Then it depends on the person's income, that's what type of carbon he brings. And if the entire congregation is tamei, so there's no carbon, then it's permissible to do this. So tumah is really lenient. And pigel is really strict. And nevertheless, pigel has a leniency that it only applies to davar sheish lematirin, not to the matter itself. It only applies to the remnant of the carbon. So in a din shleich chayav el davar sheish lematirin, when it comes to tumah, is it not a kal v'chaymer? Is it not logical? In a din, right? Is it not logical that it should only apply to a davar sheish lematirin, not to the matter itself? Talmud Laimar, so the pasuk has to come along and tell me. As our original question is, Menachem Eily, where do we know that tumah applies to every part of the sacrifice? And someone that eats this when it's tamei has to bring the carbon. It's based on the pasuk. Emar aleim l'dair seichem kol isher yikra. Is it yikra? We call zarachem, and it goes off. Any person that, let me read your pasuk from here. Emar aleim l'dair seichem kol isher yikra mikol zarachem. Any man that will bring from any of his descendants, or I guess kolish, mikol zarachem, ela kadashim asher yakdisha, from the sacrifices that he'll sanctify, asher yakdisha b'nei Yisrael Hashem v'tamasei alav, and he is impure. V'nichrasan nefashim milfanai ani Hashem. Now the word yikrav means that he will come close. We're going to think that it means to touch. It says, B'chol HaKadshim HaKasav Medaber. It's talking about Kol HaKadshim. Yachal Yu Chayav Malei Miyad. Maybe you should be Chayav immediately. Now, even before the matirim are brought, Talmud Leimer Asher Yikrav. The pasuk says, no, Asher Yikrav. Means the material need to be brought. Now, Amar Rabbi Lazar is explaining what we just said. Amar Rabbi Lazar, v'chiyesh nageshu chayev. Are you chayev just by touching? Just by touching it? We're talking about a carbon. Are you chayev just haketzad? Kol davar sheish matirin. In other words, he's trying to say that the word yikrav is not just touching. The word yikrav means that something needs to be offered. The reason why we would have thought that yikrav means touching is because we have a pasuk. The Hebrew is v'chiyiga, if you will touch, and the Targum says v'chiyikrav. Yeah. So we're taking the opposite now. We could have thought that touching means yikrav in the Hebrew. Yikrav is touching. We could have thought because in Aramaic yikrav means touching. We could have thought that the Hebrew yikrav is touching. So we're saying we could have thought that it just means touching. No, it doesn't mean touching. What it means is to yakriv means to offer up on the altar. That kol davar sheish matirin ein chayev ad sheyikriv matirin. You're not chayev until the matirin are brought. That's when you're going to be chayev if this sacrifice becomes tamei. Because if you eat from a sacrifice that becomes tamei before the matirin are brought, you don't have the laws of tumah that you have to bring the other sacrifice of korban olah v'yered, etc.